Hello everyone, welcome to Daily English Pro, your place to improve English every single day. Stay focused, listen carefully, and try to repeat after what you hear. Let's get started.
Today's podcast is 25 plus C2 level vocabulary in finance.
It's a pleasure to be here, and frankly, I'm quite excited about this one. We're not just talking about money today. We're talking about precision.
That is spot on. You know, I was thinking about this on the way over. I usually consider myself pretty decent with words. I can, hold my own at a dinner party. But when the conversation turns to finance, I feel like I'm stuck in the shallow end of the pool. I'm using words like debt or spending or bank.
The basics.
The absolute basics, yeah. While the people around me, the ones who really know what they're doing, are speaking this entirely different language, it's like intimidating.
It can feel that way, certainly. There is a vast chasm between what we might call business casual language and being truly boardroom ready.
Boardroom ready, I like that phrasing. So that is the mission for this deep dive. We are taking you, the listener, from that standard proficiency up to C2 mastery in the realm of finance. But before we get into the weeds, let's clarify the goal. When we say C2, we aren't just talking about sounding pretentious or, using big words to show off, are we?
Not in the slightest.
Yeah.
No, pretension is often just using complexity to hide a lack of meaning. In the common European framework of reference for languages, C2 is the mastery level. It's all about nuance. It's the ability to handle complex, idiomatic expressions and specialized terminology without breaking a sweat. It's the difference between saying, I owe people money, and discussing arrears, insolvency, or liquidity constraints.
So it's about specificity?
Indubitably. It allows you to navigate the dark dealings of market manipulation, understand the real architecture of debt, and even discuss the futuristic world of the digital economy with absolute clarity.
Wow.
It changes how you are perceived, but I think more importantly, it changes how you perceive the world. If you can't name a risk, you really can't manage it.
That is a powerful thought. So, looking at what we have to cover today, we've organized this logically to take us on a journey. We're going to start with the dark side of finance, the crimes and crashes.
The juicy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Then move into how businesses are actually run, look at personal wealth, and finish with the machinery of the financial system itself.
A very logical flow. Shall we begin with the stuff that makes the headlines?
Let's do it. Segment 1, the dark side of finance, misconduct and failure. And the first term here is one I hear on the news every time a regulator drops a hammer on a big industry: price fixing.
A classic starting point, and a deceptive one. Fundamentally, price fixing is an agreement between business rivals companies that should be competing against each other.
Right, they should be fighting for my money.
They should be, but instead, they agree not to sell their products at a lower price. They conspire.
Which destroys the whole point of capitalism, doesn't it? The consumer is supposed to benefit from them battling it out. So instead of trying to beat each other on price, they high-five behind the scenes and say, let's both keep the price high.
That captures it perfectly. They maintain artificially high market prices and effectively stifle competition. In a legal context, you will often hear this discussed regarding cartels.
Right, and not just the drug kind like you see in the movies.
No, economic cartels. Think about the oil industry with OPEC.
Yeah.
Or, historically, the LIBOR scandal. That was a massive event where major banks were fixing interest rates.
And that's literally manipulating the cost of borrowing money for everyone globally.
For everyone. Mortgages, business loans, everything. Or think about the pharmaceutical industry. There have been numerous allegations of generic drug manufacturers agreeing not to undercut each other.
Which keeps medicine expensive for patients who need it. That's infuriating.
It is.
But strictly from a vocabulary standpoint, if I want to sound like a C2 speaker, I shouldn't just say they agreed on the price.
No, that sounds like a negotiation, something perfectly legal. You would want to use synonyms like price collusion or cartel pricing.
Collusion, that's a much stronger word.
It is, and it's crucial to understand the antonym here. The opposite is competitive pricing or price undercutting. If you accuse a company of price fixing, you are accusing them of a serious crime. It is a pejorative term in any legal context.
Got it. So, price fixing is about artificially keeping things high. That actually leads us perfectly to the next term, which is all about things getting high and then popping. the bubble.
Ah, the bubble. Perhaps the most evocative metaphor in all of finance.
It really is. It's such a simple image, a soap bubble. You know, it's iridescent, it rises fast, it looks beautiful.
But it's incredibly fragile, empty on the inside.
Exactly.
That is the essence of it. A bubble, in financial terms, is a rapid trend of increasing prices. But here's the key distinction. It is driven by speculation, not by fundamentals.
What do you mean by fundamentals?
Fundamentals would be things like a company's profits, its revenue, the value of its assets. In a bubble, people are buying because the price is rising, not because the asset is actually generating any real value.
It's FOMO, fear of missing out, just weaponized on a massive scale.
Indeed. It is a cycle of human psychology, of social contagion that we see repeated throughout history. We saw it in 1637 with tulip mania in the Netherlands.
Right, where people were trading literal houses for a single flower bulb. It sounds insane when you say it out loud.
It does, but inside the bubble, it feels completely rational. Then we had the dot-com bubble in the late 90s, where investors were pouring billions into tech stocks that had absolutely no revenue models, just a website and a prayer.
I remember that. A .com at the end of your company name was enough to get funding.
It was. And of course, the housing bubble that led to the 2008 financial crisis, the belief that house prices could only ever go up.
It always seems to come down to that phrase Alan Greenspan coined, irrational exuberance.
A fantastic phrase. It perfectly describes herd mentality. Everyone runs in one direction, convinced that this time it's different.
But it never is.
But the laws of gravity and economics eventually apply. The bubble must burst.
Okay, so we have bubbles bursting and companies colluding. Sometimes the government steps in to help. And that brings us to a term that is, well, it's a bit of a fighting word, corporate welfare.
This term carries immense political weight. It's rarely used in a neutral context. Corporate welfare refers to government subsidies, tax breaks, or other specific incentives given to big corporations.
Now, to play devil's advocate for a second, if I'm a politician, I don't call it welfare. I say, I'm protecting jobs, I'm stimulating growth, I'm keeping this factory in our state and not letting it move overseas.
And that is exactly the argument proponents make. They frame it as a strategic investment in the local or national economy.
And sometimes that might be true, right?
It's debatable. However, the term corporate welfare is almost exclusively used by the critics. They argue it distorts the market. Why should a giant established airline get $1 billion bailout when a small bakery on Main Street gets nothing?
It favors the giants over the startups.
Precisely. It can stifle innovation because the established players are insulated from failure.
I've heard the phrase corporate welfare queen used before. That's pretty harsh.
It is a stinging collocation. It's designed to be provocative. It implies a dependency on state aid by entities that are already wealthy and powerful. It contrasts sharply with social welfare, which is intended for individuals in genuine need.
So it's a term you'd use if you were writing a critical op-ed, not a neutral financial report.
That's a very good way to put it.
Okay, so if the corporate welfare dries up or the bubble bursts, a company might get into serious trouble. And this brings us to a distinction I think a lot of people get wrong. Insolvency versus liquidation. I feel like people use these interchangeably, but they aren't the same, are they?
Not at all. And distinguishing them is a hallmark of advanced proficiency. It's a very common mistake. Insolvency is a state of being. Liquidation is an action.
Okay, let's unpack that. Insolvency is the condition, the diagnosis.
Yes, think of it that way. Insolvency is the state where your liabilities exceed your assets. Simply put, you owe more than you own, or you are in a position where you cannot pay your debts as they fall due. You are stuck. You are insolvent.
But you still exist as a company. You're just underwater.
You are breathing through a straw, yes. The business might still be operating, trying to trade its way out of the problem.
Okay, so what's liquidation then?
Liquidation, on the other hand, is the process of bringing a business to an end. It's the act of converting its assets into cash. The word comes from liquid flowing.
Right.
When you own a factory or delivery truck, that value is frozen or illiquid in the object. When you sell it for cash, you make the money liquid. You make it flow.
So liquidation is often the result of insolvency.
Often, yes. If a company is insolvent and can't be saved, a court might order it to be wound up. That involves liquidating its assets, selling the office furniture, the computers, the inventory to pay off its creditors as much as possible.
But, and I guess this is the key point, you don't have to be insolvent to liquidate something.
That's the crucial distinction. A perfectly healthy company might liquidate a division that isn't profitable, Or an investor might liquidate their stock portfolio to get the cash to buy a yacht.
I see. So insolvency is I'm broke, and liquidation is I'm selling my stuff, which I might be doing because I'm broke or for other reasons entirely.
Very simply put, yes, that's the core of it.
All right, that wraps up the dark side. A bit gloomy, but necessary. Let's move to segment 2. This is what we're calling the architecture of debt. Because, the whole world runs on IOUs.
Debt is the foundation of much of the modern economy, for better or for worse, and discussing it requires absolute precision.
Okay, the first word here is one I've seen on scary red letters in the mail. Arrears.
Yes. Never a word you want to see addressed to you personally. Arrears refers to money that is owed and is overdue. It's the sum of the payments you've missed.
Where does that word come from? It sounds old. It sounds French.
It comes from the Middle English arrêt, which literally means behind. If you are in arrears, you are running behind on your payments.
That makes perfect sense. It's such a visual word then. You're falling behind.
It is. And we use it for everything from a tenant falling into arrears on their rent, maybe they're 2 months behind, to massive sovereign debt crises. You might remember the Greek financial crisis in the 2010s.
Vaguely, yes.
That was largely a conversation about sovereign debt arrears and the risk of default. The entire country was in arrears to its international lenders.
Wow, so for a business, tracking arrears is basically just tracking who is late paying them.
That is a fair assessment. It's a critical part of managing cash flow. It's the difference between money you're owed and money you've actually received.
Now, if you want to avoid getting into arrears, or if you want to get a loan in the first place, the bank usually asks for something. They want collateral.
Collateral is the safety net for the lender. It is an asset that you pledge as security for a loan.
The stakes are pretty high here then, because if I don't pay...
If you default on the loan, the lender have the legal right to seize the collateral.
The most common example is probably a house and a mortgage, right?
Absolutely. The house is the collateral. If you stop paying the mortgage, the bank can foreclose and take the house to recover its money.
But at a C2 level, this concept is applied more broadly, I assume. It's not just houses.
Oh, much more broadly. For a tech startup, they might use their intellectual property, their patents and code as collateral to secure a business loan.
Oh, wow. So if they fail, they lose the rights to their own invention.
Indeed. It is an incredibly high-risk move, and we can even use this metaphorically. You might hear someone in a tense negotiation talk about emotional collateral. But in strict finance, it connects right back to the 2008 crisis again.
House.
The valuation of the collateral, the house has collapsed. So the loans, the mortgages, were suddenly unsupported by an asset of equal value. The whole system was built on shaky collateral.
It's all connected. It's like a web.
It is.
Now, speaking of borrowing, there are different ways to do it. You can get a standard loan or you can get a line of credit. What's the difference there?
Think of a standard loan as a block of ice. You get the whole block, say $10,000, all at once, and you start paying interest on the full amount immediately.
Okay, I've got my block of ice. Now what?
Now, a line of credit is more like a tap.
I like that analogy. It's much more flexible.
It is. It's a flexible revolving loan amount. A bank approves you for a certain limit, say $50,000. You can turn on the tap and draw $5,000 today for a small emergency. Pay it back next week, then draw $10,000 the month after for a bigger project.
And you're only paying interest on what you've actually used? On the water that comes out of the tap?
That is it. You only pay interest on the outstanding balance. It's incredibly useful for managing unpredictable expenses or for businesses with seasonal cash flow.
I've heard of a AELO-C. Is that the same thing?
A home equity line of credit. That is a perfect example. It uses the equity in your house as collateral to give you that flexible tap of money.
Okay, let's flip the script. We've talked a lot about money we owe. What about money people owe us? That's receivables.
Receivables, or in accounting terms, accounts receivable. This is the debt owed to a company by its customers for goods or services that have been delivered but not yet paid for.
So if I own a consulting firm and I send you an invoice for a project and you say I'll pay you in 30 days, that invoice represents a receivable for my company.
Correct. And here's a logic. On your balance sheet, it's counted as an asset. It's value you own because you have a legal right to that money and you expect to get paid.
I have a risky asset.
A very risky asset. Because I might go insolvent.
Ah, there it is again.
Indeed.
Oh.
If you go bust, I might have to write off those receivables. They become bad debt, and the asset vanishes from my balance sheet.
I've heard of companies selling their receivables. That seems odd. Why would I sell the money you owe me to someone else?
It is a process called factoring, and it's all about liquidity. Imagine you owe my company $100,000. but your payment terms are 90 days. I can't wait that long. I need cash now to pay my staff and my rent.
You're in a cash crunch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I might sell that $100,000 debt to a factoring company for, say, $95,000 in cash today. I lose $5,000 of potential profit, but I get the liquidity I desperately need to survive.
So you are basically liquidating your receivables to fix your cash flow problem.
Look at you, weaving the vocabulary together. That is quite right. That's a perfect C2 level sentence.
I'm learning from the best. Okay, let's move to segment 3, running the business. So we're starting a company, we have a great idea, we need money to grow, we need seed money.
A lovely metaphor, isn't it? Planting a seed from which a mighty business might grow.
It sounds very Silicon Valley, very optimistic.
It is central to that culture. Seed money is that initial capital used to start a business. It's for things like product development, market research, and getting your first prototype built.
And where does it come from? It's not a bank loan, right?
Usually not. Banks are too risk-averse for a brand new idea. It often comes from angel investors, wealthy individuals who invest their own money, or from friends and family.
And in return, they get a piece of the company.
Yes. It's an investment, not a loan. It involves very high risk for the investor and usually high equity dilution for the founder. You are giving away a significant piece of your company very early on when it's just a seed.
Okay, so we have the seed money, we open the doors, now we have the bills that never, ever stop. Overhead.
Overhead. Visualize the roof over your head. These are the regular ongoing costs required to maintain the business, regardless of how much you produce or sell.
So things like the rent for the office, the electricity bill, insurance, the receptionist's salary.
Yes. Those are all classic examples of overhead. They are distinct from direct costs, like the raw materials to make your product. Overhead happens whether you sell 1 unit or 1,000,000.
This has to be changing with remote work, though. The whole idea of a physical roof over your head is less common.
It is changing. The overhead might shift from rent to, say, software subscriptions, cybersecurity, and home office stipends for employees, but the principle remains. These are the costs of being in business.
I've also heard this term used a lot with nonprofits, the overhead myth.
That is a fascinating ethical debate. Critics often judge charities by how low their overhead is, arguing that every possible penny should go directly to the mission.
Right, they want 100% of their donation to feed hungry children, not to pay for an accountant.
Exactly. But proponents argue that this is a fallacy. Without good overhead, good computers, talented staff, a safe office, effective fundraising, the mission cannot be achieved effectively or at scale.
That makes sense. You can't save the world if your power gets shut off because you didn't pay the bill.
Quite right. Sometimes you have to spend money to make a difference.
Next up, we have a word that sounds a bit old-fashioned, but I see it in annual reports all the time. Outlay.
Outlay. It is a noun. It simply refers to an amount of money spent, specifically for an investment or a significant purchase.
So why not just say cost or expense? What's the nuance?
A cost is very general. Outlay emphasizes the act of disbursement, the money physically going out the door for a specific strategic purpose. We often talk about a capital outlay.
Like buying a massive robotic arm for a factory?
Yes. You might say, the initial outlay for the new machinery was high, but the long-term return on investment will justify it. It frames the spending as a deliberate, forward-looking action, not just a day-to-day expense.
Got it. Now, what if something goes wrong? What if that robotic arm breaks down or a pandemic hits? You need a contingency.
Everyone needs a contingency. Every person, every business, every government. This defines funds set aside for the unforeseen, for the unexpected.
The classic rainy day fund.
Exactly. The word comes from the Latin contingere, which means to happen. It's money for whatever happens.
This is huge in project management, isn't it? You hear about contingency budgets.
It is essential. If you are building a bridge, you do not just budget for the steel and concrete. You add a contingency percentage, maybe 10 or 20%, for bad weather, union strikes, or sudden price spikes in materials.
So it's planning for failure.
Or rather, planning for reality. In the insurance world, solvency depends entirely on having massive contingency reserves to pay out claims after a catastrophe.
Okay, last one in this section. This is a bit technical, but I see it when I look at my investment statements. Net asset value, or NAV?
NAV. This is a very important one for investors. It represents the true value per share of a fund, like a mutual fund.
How do you calculate it? It seems complicated.
The concept is actually quite simple.
Okay.
You take the total value of all the assets the fund owns, all the stocks, bonds, etc. Then you subtract any liabilities, like debts or fees.
Okay, assets minus liabilities.
Then you divide that final number by the total number of shares that exist. The result is the net asset value. It tells you what one share is actually worth in terms of the stuff the fund owns.
So if I buy a share of a mutual fund, I'm buying it at its NAV.
Usually, yes. But here is where it gets interesting for savvy investors. Sometimes, particularly with things like closed-end funds or real estate investment trusts, the market price, what people are paying on the stock exchange, might be different from the NAV.
Wait, how is that possible? Why would the stock price be different from the true value of what it owns?
Market sentiment, fear, greed. If investors are pessimistic about real estate, they might sell off shares of a REIT, pushing its market price lower than the actual value of the buildings it owns.
So the stock is cheaper than the sum of its parts?
Yes, it's trading at a discount to its NAV. That suggests the asset is undervalued. It's like buying a dollar bill for 90 cents.
That sounds like a good deal.
Indeed, it could be a significant opportunity for an investor who has done their homework.
All right, let's get personal. Segment 4 is personal finance and life milestones. We aren't talking about corporations anymore. We're talking about our listeners' wallets.
Which is often where this vocabulary yields the highest personal return on investment.
Let's start with a dream scenario. You win the lottery. Or maybe you're retiring. You have a choice. Monthly payments for life or a lump sum.
The classic dilemma. A lump sum is a single large payment made in full, rather than in installments over time.
It's a math problem, but it's also a big psychological test, isn't it?
It is absolutely a psychological test. If you take the lump sum from a pension, you are making a bet. You are betting that you can invest that money and get a better return than the pension fund's professional managers can.
Or you're betting that you just really want to buy a Ferrari today.
Well, yes, there is that.
Yeah.
Though financially, that is rarely the prudent choice. Statistics show that a shocking number of lottery winners who take the lump sum are insolvent within a few years.
They just can't handle it.
They lack the financial discipline for the long game. The structured payments of an annuity can be a form of forced discipline.
Speaking of the long game, we have a very British term next, but it's used globally now. Pension pot.
Yes, this is charmingly visual, the pot. It refers to the accumulated savings set aside specifically for retirement.
It sounds so cozy, my little pension pot. It sounds like something you'd find at the end of a rainbow.
It does, and that imagery is useful. We talk about building the pot during your working life and dipping into the pot when you retire. It frames the savings as a finite container. It reminds you that once a pot is empty, it's empty.
And if the pot isn't full enough as you approach retirement, you might need a top-up.
That captures it. A top-up is an extra amount of money added to an existing fund to reach a required or desired total.
I do this with my prepaid travel card all the time. I'm topping it up.
Yes, that's the everyday usage, topping up a card or a mobile phone plan. But in high-level finance, we use it for things like maximizing tax advantages. You might make a top-up contribution to your IRA or pension before the tax year ends to hit the maximum allowed limit.
It implies you're almost there. You just need that little extra splash to get to the top.
Indubitably. It's a final addition.
Now let's talk about when relationships and money mix, or rather when they unmix. Divorce. We have alimony and child support.
These are legally distinct concepts, though they are often grouped together in the public mind during a separation. Alimony refers to payments made from one ex-spouse to the other.
I read in the notes that the etymology here is quite beautiful, which is surprising.
It is. It comes from the Latin alimonia, which means nourishment.
Nourishment. That's surprisingly poetic for a court order.
It reflects the historical idea that the payments were to provide the basic necessities of life food, nourishment, to a dependent spouse, historically the wife, who may not have worked outside the home.
And how does that differ from child support?
Alimony is for the adult's maintenance. Child support is, legally, strictly for the welfare of the child. It covers their housing, food, education, and health care. The state takes child support very seriously.
More seriously than other debts.
Much more. Unpaid child support can lead to wage garnishment, suspension of a driver's license, or even jail time much faster than other consumer debts.
And alimony is changing too, right? It's not just husbands paying wives anymore.
No, not at all. It is increasingly gender neutral and based purely on income disparity between the two parties. And we even have new terms like palimony now.
Palimony. Sounds like Hollywood gossip.
It did start there, with a famous case involving an actor. But it refers to payments for unmarried partners who split up after a long-term cohabiting relationship. It's a real legal concept in some jurisdictions.
Okay, from divorce to dinner. gratuity.
Fancy word for a tip.
Why do we need a fancy word for it? It seems a bit much.
Gratuity is the formal term that appears on the receipt and legal or contractual contexts, like for large parties at a restaurant. It comes from the Latin gratia, meaning favor or thanks.
It implies it's voluntary, right? A thank you for good service.
Ideally.
Yeah.
But this has become a huge cultural and economic debate. We now have automatic gratuities or service charges added to bills, which aren't very voluntary.
Right.
And in a broader economic context, we debate whether the gratuity economy, where workers in the service industry rely on tips to make a living wage, is actually fair, or if it should be replaced by higher base wages.
It's a huge debate, but knowing the word helps you read the fine print on the menu.
It certainly does.
Okay, we have arrived at our final major segment. Segment 5, Institutions, Mechanics, and the Future. This is where we get into the gears of how the system actually works, the big picture.
And this is where the C2 vocabulary really shines. These are terms that explain how money moves around the globe almost invisibly.
Let's start with the invisible plumbing of the banking world, the clearinghouse.
A vital but often overlooked institution. A clearinghouse is the intermediary entity that settles transactions between two financial institutions, usually banks.
So if I bank with Bank A and I send money to you at Bank B, the money doesn't just fly through the air.
No, it goes through a clearinghouse. They act as the buyer to every seller and the seller to every buyer. They ensure that Bank A actually has the funds and that Bank B actually receives them. They mitigate risk.
They are like the referee in the middle of the transaction.
Or the safety net. They manage what's called counterparty risk, the risk that the other party in a deal will default. If Bank A collapses halfway through our transaction, the clearinghouse steps in and ensures the system doesn't break down.
And this is what blockchain is trying to replace, isn't it?
In essence, yes. The promise of decentralized finance is to create a trustless system that doesn't need a central clearinghouse to validate transactions.
Right. But before we get to the future, let's look at a bit of a dinosaur, the Savings and Loan Association.
Often called S&Ls. These were a type of community-focused bank, very common in the U.S. They were primarily there to take in savings from local people and provide mortgages for them to buy homes.
They sound quite wholesome, but we mostly hear about them because of the crisis in the 80s, right?
Sadly, yes. The S&L crisis. It was a perfect storm of bad deregulation, risky investments in things they didn't understand, and fraud. It's a history lesson in what happens when boring, safe institutions try to act like high-rolling investment banks.
A real cautionary tale. Stick to what you know, folks. Next up, a European favorite, Giro.
A very common term in the UK and much of Europe. It is a system for transferring money.
How is it different from, say, writing a check?
It's a great contrast. With a check, I give you a piece of paper and you go to your bank to pull the money from my account. With a Giro transfer, I instruct my bank to push the money directly to your account.
Okay, so it's a push versus a pull system.
Yeah.
And the word comes from Italian.
Yes, Giro means turn or circulation. The idea is the money circulates from one account to another. It's really the precursor to modern digital payment apps.
I love that. Moving on to something very American, or at least very Ivy League, endowment.
An endowment is a fund where money or property is donated to an institution. But, and this is the absolute key, the principal is usually kept intact in perpetuity.
So the original donation is never touched.
Correct. Only the income generated by investing that principal is spent. So if I give Harvard $1 million for an endowment.
They invest the million, maybe it makes 5% a year, so $50,000. They spend that $50,000 on scholarships or professor salaries.
But the original $1 million seed stays there forever, continuing to generate income. Is designed to provide perpetual support. Harvard's endowment is massive, tens of billions of dollars.
Now let's jump to the modern day, the buzzword of the decade, fintech.
A simple portmanteau of financial technology.
It covers everything now, doesn't it? It feels like every new company is a fintech company.
It does. It ranges from mobile banking apps and peer-to-peer lenders to commission-free stock trading platforms like Robinhood and robo-advisors that manage your portfolio automatically.
So it's the disruption of traditional brick-and-mortar banking.
It is forcing them to evolve or die. It's making financial services more accessible, but also introducing new risks, like the gamification of investing.
Now, here's a term that I think explains why the economy has been so weird for the last 15 years. Quantitative easing. or QE.
This is a heavy hitter, definitely C2 level. Quantitative easing is a form of unconventional monetary policy.
Sure.
A central bank, like the Federal Reserve in the U.S., buys securities, usually government bonds, from the open market. This act injects new money into the banking system.
People often call this printing money, right?
Colloquially, yes. They are not literally printing banknotes, but they are increasing the digital money supply.
And the goal is to lower long-term interest rates and encourage banks to lend more.
That's the theory. To stimulate economic activity during a crisis. It was the main tool used globally after the 2008 crash, and again during the pandemic.
But there is a huge risk, right?
The great controversy is always inflation. If you flood the system with money, the value of that money might drop, causing prices to rise across the board. We are seeing those debates play out globally right now.
Okay, 3 more to go. This next one sounds like a magic trick. Arbitrage.
Arbitrage is the simultaneous purchase and sale of an asset to profit from a difference in the price. It's about exploiting market inefficiency.
Can you give me a simple example?
Imagine a share of Apple stock is selling for $100 on the New York Stock Exchange, and for a split second, for $100.01 on the London Stock Exchange. An arbitrager would simultaneously buy in New York and sell in London.
And make 1 cent per share, risk-free.
Exactly, it's free money. Now, why doesn't everyone do that?
Because you'd need a supercomputer to even spot that difference, I'm guessing.
Precisely. In the modern reality, high-frequency trading algorithms, bots, do this in microseconds. The moment a tiny price gap appears, a bot closes it. The days of human arbitragers yelling on phones are mostly gone.
So the robots took all the free money. What about protecting ourselves from losing money? Hedging.
Hedging is taking an offsetting position in an investment to reduce the risk of adverse price movements. In simple terms, it's an insurance policy on your bet.
Like betting on both horses in a race to make sure you don't lose everything.
Sort of, but more strategic. Think of a farmer who grows wheat. They are terrified that the price of wheat will crash before their harvest.
Right, that would ruin them.
So they can enter into a financial contract today to sell their wheat in the future at a guaranteed price. If the market price crashes, they're protected. If the price soars, they miss out on the extra profit, but they've eliminated the risk of disaster. They have hedged their position.
Smart. It smooths out the ride. It's about sleeping at night.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
And finally, our last term. It's on every coin in your pocket. Face value.
The nominal price or value that is printed on a coin, banknote, or bond.
But a coin is worth what it says, isn't it? A quarter is worth 25 cents.
Usually for currency in circulation, but think of a rare collectible coin. It might say $1 on the face, that is its face value, but a collector might pay $1,000 for it. That is its market value.
Okay, so face value is what's printed on it, market value is what someone will actually pay for it.
Correct. The same applies to bonds. A bond might have a face value of $1,000, which is what you get back when it matures, but during its life, its market value might fluctuate above or below that based on interest rates.
And we use this as an idiom too, taking something at face value.
Which means accepting something just as it appears, without questioning or digging deeper, which frankly is the opposite of what we want our C2 listeners to do.
Absolutely. We want them digging deep. It's amazing how these words all connect when you step back and look at them together.
They form a language.
They really do. You realize that a speculative bubble caused by irrational exuberance can lead to widespread insolvency.
Which forces companies into liquidation.
And the creditors are left fighting over the collateral, hoping to get back more than just pennies on the dollar based on its face value.
While the really smart money was hedging the whole time, using complex instruments they bought and sold through a clearinghouse.
You see, you are weaving them together into a narrative. That is what C2 proficiency is all about. Using these terms correctly, knowing the difference between overhead and outlay, or arrears and default, it builds immense credibility.
It really does. It feels like we've just been given a new toolkit, a new way to see the world.
I would leave you, the listener, with this final thought. Language shapes reality, especially in finance. If you cannot name the risk, if you don't know what counterparty risk is, or the danger of an overvalued asset with no fundamentals, you cannot manage it. That's a powerful thought.
So ask yourself, are you managing your own personal endowment, thinking about the long term, building your pension pot with discipline? Or are you just living transaction to transaction? The words you use to describe your money might just change how you handle it.
I'm definitely going to be thinking about my pension pot differently from now on. Not just as savings, but as a pot to be protected.
As you should.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into financial vocabulary. We hope you feel a little more boardroom ready than you did an hour ago.
It was a pleasure to unpack these with you.
Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for listening.